Hello, and thank you for joining me again today on the Finding Hope After Loss podcast. Don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss any future episodes. If you like the show, please leave a review or rating on Apple or Spotify. It only takes a moment and really helps the show reach more loss and infertility families. I've discussed in recent episodes a few ways that you can be involved for October's Pregnancy and Infant Loss Awareness Month. One of these ways is to submit your baby's picture for an angel baby collage. This can be a photo of them, an ultrasound photo, or a photo of their name or something that represents them. You can email these to me at sarah@journeyforjasmine.com or send me a message on any of my social media at journeyforjasmine. Today I am talking with Rachael. She shares her story of going through a missed miscarriage and the 33-week loss of her son, Henry. Rachael also shares about the support she received after loss, along with her views on the term rainbow baby. Hello, everyone. Today I am here with Rachael. Rachael, can you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, of course. So I've recently turned 31. I actually live in England, so a little distance away from yourself. I am a veterinary surgeon, and sort of in my downtime, generally enjoy being outdoors, so running, hiking, just getting out there and seeing nature, I guess.
Do you have a lot of nature around you?
So we live quite near to a national park, which I would imagine is very small in comparison to what you're used to over in the States. But essentially green spaces, big hills. We take the dog out as often as we can. And yeah, that's only about sort of 30-40 minutes away from us, which is quite nice.
I always laugh because, in terms of like America versus like the UK, and y'all say like it doesn't take y'all like for us, like 30 minutes is like, or an hour even is like far, but for you guys, like it can take you like halfway across the country almost.
Yep. Yep,
For
most
us, we're still in
definitely.
the same state.
Yeah, it's a slightly different geographical makeup, isn't it?
Yeah, I've only been able to visit the UK a couple of times, but I loved it there. It's beautiful, especially compared to I'm from Texas, and yeah, Texas isn't known for being like pretty, but I think the UK is very pretty.
Oh, I've got family over in the States, but believe it or not, I've never made it over there to meet them.
Where are they at, or what state?
So I've got a cousin in Oregon and cousins in Tennessee.
Oh, those are both really pretty areas.
Yeah. Yeah, just never made it over to meet them as of yet. So there's a whole family dynamic that I'm yet to interact with, but the beauty of online is I at least know them a little bit.
Yeah, the internet can be good for a lot of things, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
So, do you mind talking a little bit about your lost journey?
Yeah, of course. So me and my husband Tom, we met in sixth form. So a good 11, no, 12, 13 years ago now. We dated for a little while. University caused us to split, and then we got back together. And after about 4 years, we were married in May of 22, so 2 years married. Um, we decided to start trying for a family really quickly. And we started trying in the July. And the fairy tale bit of our story is that I was pregnant by the August, which was lovely. Unfortunately, that pregnancy ended in a missed miscarriage in the October of 22, and I had to have a D&C procedure. We started trying again very soon afterwards, well, immediately afterwards, actually. And it took us 8 months to conceive what we now know was Henry. I had, I would say, routine pregnancy, but in all honesty, it wasn't that routine. There was nothing that made us concerned Henry wasn't going to come home. That, none of the test scans, anything that I had, it was more concerns with myself and severe sickness that were the issues. Um, and then at 33 weeks gestation, I got home from work one day. Tom wasn't in. Realised that I'd not felt baby move. We didn't know at that point that he was a boy. realised I'd not felt him move and went up to triage to be told that he had died. Um, so I delivered him 3 days later on the 30th of December last year. And that is about the sum of our journey so far, I guess.
Did you ever think that loss would be something that you'd be dealing with?
Um, I suppose that's where my story differs a little bit from I would say the majority of people, because I would imagine most people just say no to that question. In October of 2020, I was diagnosed with a pituitary tumor. So it's a benign tumor. I just take medication to control it. But because that tumor is prolactin releasing, we kind of always knew that we might have issues with infertility. And we also knew that we might have issues carrying a pregnancy to term. So I was, to some extent, more aware of miscarriage than perhaps the normal person is. I never envisaged that we would get as far as 33 weeks and then lose a child. I never thought that that would be part of our journey. But yeah, I suppose I was a little bit more wary, shall we say, of loss. But even when you know that that can happen, it doesn't happen until it happens to you, right?
Right. Yeah, I feel like even if you think it could possibly happen to you, like it's like you still don't expect it to
No, definitely not.
until like you said, until it does. Did you have good support from your family and friends after your loss?
Um, After the miscarriage, well, in both cases, actually, yes and no. So after the miscarriage, I would say support from family and close friends was there. There was a lot of at least comments from everybody else, I would say. Um, After we lost Henry, I mean, obviously it's only been 6 months, but support has been very, very varied. Um, for the most part, family have been phenomenal. Like my local sort of best girls, if you like, have been amazing. But I'd be lying if I said it hadn't changed relationships and friendships with people that I wouldn't have expected it to change relationships with.
I think that's one of the most surprising things for so many of us. Like it's
Yeah.
like you expect certain people to be there for you, and then sometimes they're the ones who aren't at all.
Yeah, absolutely. And then people that you don't expect anything from, that maybe I don't know, you've had three conversations within your entire life and they're very much a Facebook friend, really come out of the woodwork and help you a lot. So I just don't think you know what you're going to get from people. It really does change dynamics, I think.
Yeah, if I think some people just aren't, I don't know, I guess they aren't comfortable with it, but I'm like,
Yeah.
we're not comfortable with it either, and we're the ones having to live it. So
Yeah, I think when I talk to like people who have been more supportive about it, and they say, oh, people just don't know what to say. It makes them really uncomfortable. It's hard for them. I'm like, yes, it's hard for me too. Have you not noticed that?
you're like, I'm the one struggling over here, okay?
Yeah.
Like, I don't know, people sometimes, I think, like I said, we're just so uncomfortable with grief, and especially with when it comes to pregnancy loss and baby
Yeah.
loss, like people just are like, oh, I don't know what to do. So then they just do stupid things sometimes.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely.
Did you feel like you've got support from your medical team and doctors?
On the day that we found out Henry had died, we had a midwife. I'll not name her just in case she doesn't want to be named. But we had an absolutely amazing midwife. So she was there the night that we found out he had passed. And she volunteered herself to be the midwife when we subsequently went back in to deliver him. Um, so I had to take a medication the night that we found out he'd gone, come home for 48 hours while that did its job, and then go back in late evening to be medically induced. Um, and I delivered him we'd gone back in at 10 o'clock on the Friday night. I delivered him Saturday lunchtime. And she came on shift sort of like 7:30 on the Saturday morning. So like when I was sort of heading into active labour as such. And she was absolutely amazing. She was just so calm and so empowering. And when Henry was born, she did all the things that, I mean, I don't have living children, obviously, but she did all the things that I would imagine a midwife does with them. So she still weighed him, like she held him so gently, she spoke to him, she did his handprints, his footprints, and she was just absolutely phenomenal. Um, and I'm still sort of in touch with her a little bit, which is really nice. Um, I would say the care that we've had medically since we left Henry at the hospital hasn't been great, if I'm being honest. Obviously we're fortunate to have the NHS over here, so we don't have like the financial worries or anything like that. But the care absolutely could have been better. We recently actually got they do like a review of care for sort of Henry pre his death and me post his death. And that review sort of deemed that there weren't any issues with the care that I received afterwards. But I went to appointments where they hadn't read my notes, and like I walked into the doctors and the doctor just went, "Oh, did you have a nice routine birth then?" And I was like, "No." Like, where do you think my son is at the moment? Because no, I didn't. Um, I got put on the phone when I'd gone to appointments to have blood tests done, and they didn't know what bloods were required, and they put me on the phone in a non-private pace to explain the situation, and it just really, really horrible, triggering things. And they somehow think that that is acceptable. So we're currently trying to communicate with our bereavement midwife, who is a separate midwife to the lady who delivered Henry, just to try and improve things for women in the future, I guess, or families in the future.
It's just crazy to me that, I mean, this is like one of the most sensitive situations and they can't even like read notes.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think even if I had, even if my child was living, well, you need to read the notes to know if I've had a vaginal delivery or if I've had a C-section, because presumably you need to do different depending on what sort of delivery I've had. But yeah, she hadn't read the notes, and she openly admitted that she hadn't read the notes, and yeah, just a whole thing.
Are there any particular things that you have found that have been helping you with your grief?
Um, I think just taking it each day as it comes. So obviously after the miscarriage, I threw myself into fundraising for the London Marathon, which I ran for a charity called Tommy's. So that was very much my coping mechanism, sort of post miscarriage. Um, at that point, I was using sort of my personal social media to speak a little bit and just do like sort of simple fundraising. Um, and it was very shortly after I completed the marathon that I became pregnant with Henry. Um, so I very much threw myself into a challenge, which I think was in some regard a healthy coping mechanism, but in others possibly was a bit of a distraction technique. Um, I didn't do that after Henry because so many people thought that it had taken me a while to conceive because of the physical stress I was putting my body under, obviously training. So I haven't done that this time. I think the urge to do something like that is growing, if I'm being honest. So this time we've done a lot of hiking in the peaks. We've actually started taking little pebbles with Henry's name on, sort of to significant places that we visit, just as like a little tribute to him, I guess. I've done a bit of journaling, but yeah, mainly being outdoors and just hiking until even the dog is tired.
I do understand that feeling though. It's like when you lose your baby, it feels like it's all just so out of your control and you just
Yeah.
need something you can control and something you can focus on to like you said, like be a distraction.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. I was a little bit cautious this time because we have begun to try to conceive again. Um, so obviously it's kind of like how much do I how do I weight this? Do I put my body through something physical as a distraction, as a motivation, or do I pull that bit back just in case people were right and that's why I didn't get pregnant? But considering it's not going quite so well for us on the getting pregnant front, I'm starting to think there might not have been a lot of stock in it.
Yeah, but yeah, it's hard to know and you want to like it's like when you're trying to get pregnant again, you're trying to walk the line of like still living your life
Yeah,
and not
yeah.
putting it all on hold, but like also wanting to put it all on hold so everything is right, so it'll hopefully happen faster.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's so difficult to plan anything. I mean, obviously it took us 8 months to get Henry. We're on now 6 failed attempts to get Henry a little sibling, which I appreciate in some people's journeys is small. But I think obviously after loss and knowing that we should have 2 children here, we are finding it quite hard to be patient. And yeah, just planning and like you say, living life around that almost is really, really difficult. Like even simple things like going on holiday, it's like, well, what if I'm too pregnant by then? Or what if we've got a newborn? But then on the flip side, you're going, well, what if we don't and we've, wasted another opportunity and another X amount of months waiting?
Yeah, exactly. It's like that double-edged sword there. So how did you decide that you guys were ready to try again?
Um, Honestly, I don't know that we have fully decided that. So initially we got given lots of conflicting advice from a medical standpoint. So every single person that we asked told us different. Um, After we'd had the miscarriage, I vividly remember a consultant. So I was still pregnant at this point. I hadn't had my D&C. And I vividly remember this consultant going, "Oh, well, the good news is you're more fertile after a miscarriage."
Oh,
And I
helpful.
wanted to scream at him. I was like, Really? That's the good news right now?" But subsequently I did have that in my head after I'd given birth to Henry because the same logic in inverted commas is there. Um, so we were told anything from 2 weeks once my stitches from the vaginal delivery had healed, right through to 18 months as the window for when we could try again. The only advice that we received that we felt made sense was that we waited for Henry's post-mortem results to come back to us because we did elect to have a post-mortem, just in case that revealed anything that they would need to do in obviously a subsequent pregnancy. Um, so we had conversations about, do we abstain? Do I go back on contraception? What do we do here? Um, and we sort of reached the decision that we weren't ready to try, as in actively try, but we certainly weren't ready. I couldn't bring myself to go up to the doctors to go back on contraception. And a lot of the options are limited to me because of my pituitary tumor. So we sort of just went for this, well, let's not try, but let's not prevent approach. And it honestly kind of felt like we went back to being irresponsible teenagers. Because we were just like, what are we actually doing here? Um, we kind of have the conversation almost monthly, really. Like, I get my period, we go, it's not happened this month, what are we doing next month? And we almost reach the same conclusion that no matter how long we wait, we are still going to be petrified to see that positive pregnancy result. We are also going to be heartbroken to see a negative one. And I don't think that that will change no matter how long we wait. So for us, it's almost been the acceptance of we want another baby. We want to bring a baby home. And the only way that we feel we can do that at the moment is to try and conceive and carry naturally ourselves. And we accept that that might take a while, and we accept that that will bring with it its own hardships when it does happen. But hopefully it works out for us next time. And if it doesn't, then obviously at that point we might look to explore other options for what our future looks like and how we're going to get there. But yeah, certainly for the time being, we're hoping that next time is our time, I guess.
And I think it's true that you can never really like 100% feel ready to try again.
No.
You just have to, I guess, not, you have to have, I'm trying to like describe what is in my head. That's hard sometimes. Like you have to, I guess, have more hope than you have fear.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think my husband says to me often, like he's very worried that if we do become pregnant and it were to end in another loss, no matter what stage that loss happens at, he's worried about the impact that it will have, obviously being, the third time and after everything else that's happened. Um, so that's what puts him off, not puts him off, but kind of makes us address it each month about whether this is still the right thing for us to do. My answer to that is always, well, I'm worried about what will happen if we remove that little bit of hope that we do have each month, that this month might be our month, to get that positive, and then that might be our 9 months to bring a baby home. So it's weighing up, literally, as you've just said, the hope versus the fear, I guess.
Yeah, yeah. And I know it's hard too sometimes when you and your partner, I mean, like you're on the same page, but you still have different fears.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely.
So do they think, or have they ever like done any testing or like think that your losses are related, or do they think they're like independent of each other, or have they ever said anything about it?
So the only testing I had after my miscarriage was testing on the material removed for a molar or partial molar pregnancy. So that was the only testing that they did at that point. And that all was clear. It wasn't either of those things that was the cause. Um, for Henry, we had obviously the post-mortem. The way they described it to us was they didn't reach a conclusive reason. But obviously being a vet and having medical understanding myself, I did ask for a copy of his autopsy report, which was the worst read of my life, but it did give us more information than what they had obviously disclosed to us in the appointment. So they'd given us three things that were fetal sepsis, an issue, sort of broadly speaking, an issue with my placenta, and an issue with Henry's umbilical cord. Um, when I read the report, I don't think that sepsis and infection played any part. There was a lot of like conflicting evidence there. Um, and they'd also included that there was some potential that I had thrown a blood clot, which I again think combined with potentially this placental issue and the umbilical cord probably was the cause. The only reason that they wouldn't definitively say that it was that was because Henry was such a good size for his gestation. So he was 5 pounds at 33 weeks. So they obviously were saying, the placenta had to have been working because he'd grown so well. But if I had thrown a clot, he was going to have been growing absolutely fine until he just stopped. So I think it's more likely to be that. So future pregnancies, they will pop me on aspirin. I think the kicker for us was they told us that they would monitor me more closely with scans. But I was already being monitored quite closely through my pregnancy with Henry because of the tumour, and a couple of other things that they'd found early on the 12-week scan. They'd found a small issue, again with me, not with Henry. So we'd actually had a scan just 5 days before he died. which I said, obviously, when they said, oh, we'll monitor you more closely, I was like, we'd had a scan 5 days. That doesn't really reassure me massively. And the kicker for us was that they said, oh, well, we can check for this issue with your placenta, but we don't until you're high risk. So basically saying we might have found something if we'd have looked for it 5 days before, but we didn't. And we will do next time. Sorry about that.
That's so frustrating. It's like, how hard is it to
Yeah.
look at these things routinely? I mean,
Yeah.
it's by ultrasound, right?
Yeah. I mean, we didn't really delve into what looking for this would be, but from what I can understand, it would literally just be an ultrasound of my placenta to look at, blood flow through it. So they check the blood flow through the umbilical cord, but not the placenta itself. Um, which, yeah, as you say, when you're quite literally there, just check it. Um,
Just add
it
it as like another of your routine checks, you know?
yeah, it is frustrating to hear. And obviously, again, with his review of care, they deemed that, he wasn't failed. And I agree, based on, the NHS protocol at the moment says that they don't have to check that, and that's fine. But it also said that protocols don't need to be changed. But then obviously my question is, well, hang on a minute, how many babies need to die in what time span before you go, no, actually that protocol does need to be changed. So it's just trying to I guess communicate that to the people who can make a difference. But yeah, it's all a bit of a work in progress for me at the moment.
Yeah, it's especially hard when you're one of the ones who lost your baby over
Yeah,
something that you feel could have been detected beforehand.
yeah, absolutely. And it might have been that they checked for that those 5 days before and there was no issues, but if they had, at least we wouldn't be left with what ifs and buts and maybes like we are now.
Ugh, the what ifs. That is so hard. I deal
Yeah.
with that so much. Even now, like with Jasmine, I still think about what if I had tried this or what if this, and I'm like, it may not have made a difference, but maybe it would have.
Yeah. It's the torment that you put yourself around, isn't it?
And I try really hard to not do it, but then I
Yeah.
always like occasionally find myself there. I'm like, all right, you've got to stop this.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
It could be like an endless spiral sometimes.
Yeah, I'm the same as you. I try not to go there. But it's quite hard not to sometimes.
So do you know anybody else, like friends or family around you that has had a loss?
Before we'd lost Henry, the only person I knew is a close family friend. So her eldest son is the same age as me, and her middle daughter is the same age as my younger sister. She did go on to have a third child, um, who she unfortunately lost, I believe she was about 21 weeks. Um, so she was actually one of the first people that I called after we'd got the news that Henry had passed, because I essentially just wanted to be like, is there anything that you wish you'd done? Is there anything that you regret having done? And would you do anything differently? Um, I don't want to go into it too much because obviously it's her story, but it was very, very different to how we'd lost Henry. They knew that the pregnancy probably wouldn't last. So obviously it wasn't a shock, but it was still absolutely a loss and, a very much loved child. But there were differences there. But she, in that initial period, in that 48 hours when we had a lot of decision making about how we wanted to spend the time that we would have with Henry, she was really, really helpful to me. Um, since we've lost Henry, again, power of, social media, there are a few people that I've connected with. There's a couple that live actually very, very close to us, that lost two of their babies, before they've now had their little girl. And they've been an absolutely massive help. They've actually set up a charity, after their little boy. So they called their first boy Lenny. So their charity is Lenny's Legacy. And they've been absolutely amazing in supporting both myself and Tom, which Tom shies away from the support a little bit more than I do. So that, yeah, they've been a really big help for him.
I love social media for that. Like, I
Yeah.
didn't find the lost community until a couple of years actually after losing Jasmine, but I really wish I
Okay.
had found it sooner.
Yeah, I'm gonna say that must have been a really lonely couple of years, I would imagine. It's definitely been a really big help to find the community for myself.
So, why is it that you feel it's important to share your story?
Um, I just think again, in both regards for myself, like after the miscarriage, the difference is the miscarriage, everyone came forward and was like, oh yeah, I've had one too, or so and so's had one, and like everyone just seemed to come out of the woodwork, and it was like, well, hang on a minute. Some of these people are like my really, really good friends. Like, why do I not know this? Why have you never told me? And I completely understand some people want to keep it private, and that is absolutely fine. But when I actually spoke to them and said, why didn't you? They were like, oh, well, you just don't talk about it, do you? And I was like, yeah, but why don't we? It's hard enough to go through. Why actually are we making families go through these things on their own without support and making it this stigmatized subject almost that should just be brushed under the carpet as if it's something to be ashamed of? We've already touched on that we torment ourselves. Well, actually, maybe part of the reason is that we go round and round in circles wondering if there's more that we could have done is because we're made to feel like there's some form of shame in what we've gone through, and there absolutely isn't. um I suppose I should feel lucky that when we lost Henry, well, no one personally came out of the woodwork to tell us, which, very, very glad that hardly any of my family and friends have experienced that. Um, but again, I think there'll be people out there that do go through it alone, and that I can't imagine it. Um, I think for me, wanting to do it sort of so early on in our journey, particularly obviously only been 6 months since we lost Henry, a lot of the resources and the information and the podcast accounts, whatever it is that is out there, comes from people sort of several years post that loss. And often, their journey might have ended on their own terms. They might now have their children, like more children at home. And for me, that doesn't sit right. I just think, yeah, but there was a time that you were in my shoes and you didn't know whether that would ever happen, and you felt like I felt, but that doesn't seem to be out there as much. So I kind of wanted to be the voice that put that out there, really.
And I think that's a really important perspective because you're right. We were all, trying to get pregnant again after loss, not
Yeah,
knowing if or when it would happen. And, there's a lot of people out there who don't try again for whatever reason or,
yeah,
and it just seems like the narrative out there is, okay, we have a loss, everybody goes on to successfully have a rainbow baby, and then we're all happy again.
yeah. I'll be honest, I now hate the term rainbow baby. I absolutely hate it because to me, Henry was still my rainbow. Like I still refer to him as my rainbow baby. He obviously wasn't that in the sense that everybody means, but for me to stop calling him that almost makes me feel like I'm saying, "Oh no, you're the bad bit now," and that just doesn't sit right with me. Like he's still my little boy. Um, and yeah, like you say, not everyone goes on to try again, or people do go on to try again and don't succeed. Um, I think what I'm struggling with at the moment is I always imagine myself with three children at home, all playing. Obviously, none of the loss was ever in my head. Um, and now I don't know if we do succeed in bringing one home. I don't know that we'll go on to have more. I think there's still a lot of what ifs in that section for me. So that's something else that people don't really speak about. You might get your rainbow baby, but actually, do you get everything that you thought you'd have? Like, I don't think that you ever do, really.
Yeah, no, I agree with that. I mean, I remember, when I first started trying to have kids, and I was like, oh, I want to have, 2 kids, and I want to have them by the time I'm 30.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, that didn't happen.
No. Why do we all put this emphasis on 30?
I don't know.
It's
I
mad. So we fell pregnant with the first, and I would have had the first 2 months before I turned 30. So like, yes, goal achieved, well done me. And then obviously that didn't happen. And we actually found out we were pregnant with Henry 2 days before my 30th birthday. And I had been dreading that birthday. I was like, oh, this is awful. I don't have a child at home. Like this is not what I thought my life would look like at 30. And I got that positive test, and all of a sudden I was like, yes, I'm turning 30. This is great.
You're like, this is on my timeline again. It's good.
Yeah. And then, oh no, it wasn't.
I feel like
But
part of
yeah, I
it
think
is just, oh, go ahead.
yeah, we just put so much emphasis on turning 30, and I don't really know why.
I think part of it is because they make you feel old. Like, oh, you turn 30, your fertility declines, and then you turn 35, and oh my gosh, you're old.
Yeah, you've got no chance after that, which, it's just not true, is it?
No, I mean, I've seen, like, I actually had somebody on the podcast a few episodes ago who had a baby at age 50.
Yeah, so I mean, it can happen. It's as simple as that.
So, is there anything else that you would like to share or add?
I just think for myself, the sort of things that I wanted to speak about was particularly if there's anyone that listens to this that hasn't experienced loss themselves, but maybe listens so that they can know how to help a family or friend that, that has. Um, I think the instinct, and understandably so, but I think the instinct is that we try to make it better. Um, as blunt as it is, there is no making this better. And I think that's really hard to accept, but there isn't anything that anyone can say or do that makes this okay. And obviously when people say things with absolutely every good intention and, heartfelt nature, they actually do is minimize things. So a few of the things that I've had said is like, oh, but you can have another one. Like, he's not he's not replaceable. Like, even if I go on to have another baby, like Henry is he's still gone. Like, you're not bringing him back. Or people like, offering other options of how you can get there. Oh, well, there's surrogacy, there's adoption. And I'm like, yes, again, if we do that, Henry's still not here.
Mhm.
Um, so I think, yeah, there's this tendency to offer advice that improves the situation, but actually sometimes just sitting with people and letting them talk or letting them cry or whatever it is that they need to do on that day, half the time we don't actually need a response, or I certainly don't. I just need a safe space is basically that's the best thing that you can give to someone, I think.
Yeah, I agree. I think most of us just want to know that we have somebody who's there to listen and be there for us. Like
Yeah.
we're not asking you, like you said, we're not asking you to fix it because you can't fix it.
Yeah, it's just literally having someone there to listen, and I won't even say to understand, because I don't think it is possible to understand this unless you've gone through it. Um, but yeah, literally just to listen, I think is the best gift that could possibly be given to someone who's experienced this.
Well, I want to thank you so much for coming on today and sharing your story with us.
No, you're very welcome. Thank you very much for having me.
Thank you so much, Rachel, for sharing your story with us. I think it's always interesting to hear from other lost parents how they do or don't like certain terms. For instance, as Rachel was discussing, the term rainbow baby. It's a term that has a lot of meaning for many people, yet many people also hate the term. It has different meanings to different people. For those who like it, we see the storm as the grief and pain that we endured to get to the rainbow on the other side. For those who don't like it, they feel it refers to their baby as the storm and think it's a more negative term. I think whichever side you land on, it isn't right or wrong to feel how you feel. We just have to do what feels right for us personally, and also let others do what feels right to them. Remember, we're all just doing the best we can in this cloud of grief we're in. Don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss any future episodes. If you like the show, please leave a review or rating on Apple or Spotify. It only takes a moment and really helps the show reach more loss and infertility families. Thank you so much for tuning in, and remember, we are all in this together.